What up, young slumlords and ladies? This is Jake Lapp, and welcome to the Young Slumlords podcast, where me and Caleb Henshaw talk our shiz and hopefully help spark the idea for finding your financial independence in this paycheck-to-paycheck world. What's up, everybody? It's Jake Lapp, and welcome back. This week, we had someone reach out, a friend of mine, and he had some questions that we broke down a lot of numbers with him and went through a couple of different situations, and his situation seems like a super common situation for a lot of guys our age, and that situation being like, hey man, I just graduated college 6 months ago. I graduated with $60,000 in student loan debt. I got a job, I'm working, I'm making 50 grand a year, and I'm living at home. So what he's been doing so far has been really hammering his student debt, paying as much as he can every month. And he's gotten his debt down so far to $39,500, 40 grand to make it easy. And he sees it doable, like with his salary and stuff, to continually contribute and overpay on his student loans at $2,000 a month. He sees that as super doable. So he was like, I really want to get into real estate investing. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like your guys' show has made it kind of clear, like this is what I think we should be doing. But he's kind of torn between, should I keep hammering my debt? Should I buy a house? Should I save for the house? Like, what would you guys do? And his situation's a little different. So like in a year, his parents are either going to charge him rent or he can get his own apartment. So his plan was to get an apartment, keep paying his student loans, and then, hopefully be done with that and then start saving to put a down payment on a house. So we ran through two situations with him. First being his current thought process. Okay, for the next year, he's able to put $2,000 a month towards his student loans. So 2,000 times 12 is 24,000. He started at 40, 24,000 later, he's down to 16. Then when that year's up, now he's got to start renting. So now we said, okay, let's say you find a real cheap spot, let's say $1,000 a month. Now, $1,000 a month can now, the same amount, he's still got that $2,000 that he can either put to something or spend, on whatever. So we're saying $1,000 a month towards his rent and $1,000 a month towards the remaining $16,000 in student debt. So that means in 16 months, he's done. In 16 months, he's staying in an apartment, continually paying $1,000 a month. And in 16 months, so from now, a year, 12 months, plus 16 months, 26 months, his student debt is paid off and he has nothing. And so now he's back to square one where, okay, now I can start saving for a down payment on a house. So now going forward from there, he's still paying $1,000 a month. He still has $2,000 a month to go somewhere. So $1,000 going to rent, $1,000 going to somewhere else. So now he can save $1,000 a month. So now in order for him to save 20 grand, it's going to take 20 more months. So with his situation, from now till he has 20 grand saved up to put on a down payment, it's 46 months.
It's a long time.
What's that, almost 4 years? 2 months short of 4 years?
Yeah.
So in 4 years from now, he could get started in real estate investing if everything stays the same. And there's tons of variables. He could get his income up, and we talked about other options on that. But that's situation one. And that's, I feel like, what a lot of people try to do. That's their thought process. But in those 4 years, that's when you get a girlfriend. That's when you get married. That's when you get a kid. And when all those other variables are happening is the entire reason why people don't invest in real estate, because those luxuries of a family aren't free. They're expensive luxuries. Having a child, having a wife, doing that kind of stuff, it costs money. Now you need to rent somewhere bigger. So now his expenses in those 4 years are going up as well. There's less room to save, more expenses going out. It's harder, and it traps you in that paycheck to paycheck thing that we're trying to get out of.
And like, unless you're extremely vigilant, you're going to increase your living standard as your income increases as well. So like, as you make more money at your job, you end up finding new opportunities to spend that money, and it's justified because you're making more money. And that's like a subconscious thing that all of us do. We have every opportunity in our society now to spend more money. It's just like the thing to do. So unless like you can really hash out a specific plan where you're saving X amount of your income every single month first, or right when you get that check, you move it to a different bank account, don't even touch it and never look at it, you're going to have a lot of temptation to spend that money. So that's a tough spot. And, over 4 years, who knows what could change? That's a long time to plan something out for something as just buying one rental property. And at least like I've actually been in a similar situation myself when I got started. I had student loan debts. I was having to rent from my parents because they needed the money while I was staying there. And I can just say from my personal experience, when I looked at this exact same scenario myself, I just bit the bullet, stayed with my parents, and paid them the monthly amount because it was multiple times cheaper to pay them rent than it was to pay some random landlord somewhere $1,000 a month. I was only paying $350 a month for them. So it's like practically nothing. And when I moved out after saving, my expenses are covered by my income. So I'm actually now saving money.
Right. So he didn't get into like what he was going to pay his parents for rent. But if we could change that whole formula now, but you don't want to. You want to move out. We're at that age, you want to be able to get out of the house and take advantage. If your parents aren't charging you rent or they're charging you a cheap rent, and you're able to save during that time, that's awesome. But there's going to be a point that you're going to hit that life's continuing to go on and you don't want to keep living at your parents' house. That's just normal. Yep. And that's how it should be. Our parents, no one stayed at home past when they were 18 years old. That was just the normal thing. So our generation has been a little more, lax on that.
Yeah. And there's so many factors included there. We don't want to throw shade on anybody staying with their parents. Sometimes it's just the cards you were dealt and you're going to have to stick with it until you can save up enough money to move out. And there's no shame in that. It is a terrible idea to go out and rent an expensive apartment just so that you can say that you're not living with your parents anymore and then get stuck in a lifelong trap of being stuck paycheck to paycheck forever.
100%.
So there's no shame in staying with your parents until you have enough to purchase a rental property. It's just numbers at that point. And that leads us into option 2, which would be paying the minimum on the student debts, just bare minimum, as little as you possibly can, and then saving as much as possible.
Right. So for this instance, I was fortunate enough to not have student debt. I don't know what the minimum payments are and stuff like that, but we kind of talked it out, and it's maybe $300 a month is considered the minimum, and we're going to use that for situation 2, this other side of things. So in situation 1, we have our end result 46 months from now, enough money saved up to put a down payment on a house. Situation 2, what we're going to be doing is making that minimum payment of $300 a month. And he's still got that same $2,000. And so now he's able to save $1,700 a month. And over the course of the next year, in 12 months times 1,700 is $20,400. Making that $300 payment towards his student debt, that brings his $40,000 to 36,000 and some change. So he barely touched his student debt during this time by just making those minimums. But he's got over $20,000 in the bank. And we're going to go over a deal analysis later. But, there's deals where you're able to put 5% down on a duplex and have your mortgage covered. If not, making a little more off of that $20,000. So in a year now, he would have the ability to put a down payment on a duplex. And for this instance, let's say he's cash positive $200 a month. So now he's got that same ultimatum that, okay, you've got to either rent from us or move out and find your own place in those 12 months. So now he's got enough money to put a down payment on a duplex. He gets in there and now he's living rent-free, making $200 a month. So now his $2,000 that he was able to put down onto his student loans now turns to $2,200 a month that he's able to put on his student loans. So that for doing that $2,200 a month for, what did we say, 36,000 he had left. So 36,000 divided by 2,200 is 16.36. So in 17 months from then, his student loans are paid off. He's been living for free, making money, building equity in a property, and has a jump start on everyone else who did situation 1. So now going forward, because we're looking at 46 months for situation 1 to get to where he'd be at 28 months. So the 12 first months and then 16 months later is 28 months. He's skipping close to 2 years.
It comes down to, like, simply put, option 1 of paying your student loan debt first just makes it so that you have no way to leverage your money to leap forward in your financial position versus keeping the loans that you have and just pushing them off as long as you can to then save up money to then leverage it for a house. Like when you get a mortgage, you take, say, $20,000 to $30,000 and then you turn it into control over $200,000. And that leverage there is what really makes it so that you can like take a financial leap forward. And having the second option where you just save up all your money as much as you can to buy a house. And like, granted, if you are in living with your parents, that situation, you can, I'm sure you could talk to them and be like, hey, like, this is my plan. This is where I'm going to be going forward. This is what I want to save up to and set myself up for life with rental properties. Unless your parents are like really strapped for cash, they're going to give you some leeway on how much money you're paying them because, they want to, most likely see you succeed yourself.
Yeah,
so.
not all parents are like that.
Yeah, maybe not, but
definitely some. So now in going to that same 46-month standard, if nothing else changed, if he's making the same income, he's still able to save $2,000 a month, now $2,200, he's living somewhere for free. Now, at that same timeline, at 46 months, he now saved up $40,000 more. So not only does he have a house that he's building equity in, some passive income coming in, his student debts are paid off in both situations, but now he's got the money to go into the next deal in those extra 18 months. So now, not only is he, being able to save a little more, living for free, blah, 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 which is all great. Now he has the freedom to get into the next place. And like, you don't need to scale a real estate empire. If you have one rental property, that's a lot better than none. So let's say he decides to buy his single family house next at that same time frame when he's got $40,000 to put down. Now that $40,000 is not only giving him the down payment for the next house, now he can rent his old unit out. So now that cash flow is going from $200 a month to, let's say, another
grand, say $1,200.
Yeah, let's say another $1,200. So that's $1,400 a month in passive income from that one property, that one smart decision that he made, and that's paying his mortgage on his primary residence. Now he doesn't have to keep flipping houses, flipping rentals to get this passive income up to where he wants to retire. He could, that's what we're doing. That's a great goal to strive for. But if, let's say the first one was a little more work, or he just wants to chill and have a family, his rental that he decided to do at, in his early 20s is now affording him a 30-year mortgage at his primary residence that, like, is not the luxury that everyone has. Like, unless you have another stream of passive income, which, that's great if you do, but not a lot of people do. He's living for free now, paying off 2 houses off of the rentals from one house. And when I look at those 2 situations, it's like, what would make someone choose situation 1? And like, he's like, have you ever heard of Dave Ramsey? And I'm like, yes, I have. And Dave Ramsey is a great resource in getting rid of debt. He's a huge advocate for getting rid of debt. It's something that, is killing the American people. But at the same time, if this investment that you're making is bringing in a greater return than the interest you're accruing on your whatever debt, that's a better investment. The interests are balancing out, and you might be growing a little less, but it's still more than just making those minimum payments.
And this is important to like clarify. We're talking like student loan debt with like a lower interest rates topped with, federal forgiveness right now with the COVID acts that are coming out, like prolonging interest. If you were to say I have $40,000 in credit card debt at 28% interest,
Little different.
completely different story. There's no way you can make the minimum payments on that and then still make good decisions with the money you save up. Like the interest rate is so high that trying to get a real estate investment that pays more than 28% interest would be very difficult to do with a low down payment. So, this is geared specifically towards students with student loan debt with the lower interest rate. And like I said before, like people aren't required to pay interest right now on their student loan debt. They don't even have to make the payments on the student loan debt itself for however long this act is. They just passed the stimulus bill today, so it could be even longer. There's a lot of other variables involved here with calculating which is the higher opportunity cost, but with Dave Ramsey's all debt is bad, that's not necessarily, the case with a rental property. You are making your money work for you. So instead of giving all your money back to the bank for that student loan, just keep it, save it up yourself, and then make it work for you. Create an income snowball. Instead of a debt snowball, start working towards making that income snowball that you can use to build up more money coming in monthly that you can then create more income coming in through more properties. So it just keeps growing and growing and growing. And then next thing you know, you're financially independent.
Yeah. So his then, after we talked a little bit about Dave Ramsey, he was like, this seems too good to be true. It seems too easy. And I really wanted, because sure, when we write it down on paper or like over text or whatever, it sounds easy. It's like, oh yeah, you just save $2,000 a month and then you have 20 grand and then, you just buy a house and then it's automatically making you all this money. That doesn't seem right. And he's right. It's not that. So it is that simple, but the feeling involved in it.
There's no emotion factored in that spreadsheet whatsoever.
And the work that you're going to be putting in, at buying a place at this price range that's going to make this amount of money, there's going to be some work required in that property. I can guarantee. And like, if you're not handy, if you don't know, but like we've talked about a million times on the podcast, like that's something you can learn, but it's like, do you want to learn it? Like if you don't, and it's like, now it's unreachable because the rehab cost is going to be more than you can afford. It's going to be more than that 20 grand. Like you can't afford to pay someone to come out and put new floors and paint and new plumbing and all this stuff. But if you choose to do that, it's super affordable. And you can do it kind of on your own timeline, especially if you're living in the worst unit, which is what we suggest. So like, it's not talked about a lot, but like that couple months where you're looking at houses, you're putting an offer in, you're getting your offer accepted, the paperwork that's required in there, finding a tenant, doing the rehab, like that 3-month window for my first deal, and I know for Caleb's first deal, was the most stressful time in my life that I can think of.
It was up there, definitely.
Because there's no easy solutions to anything.
Yep.
Like if there's a significant problem, I think someone was just on a podcast I was just listening to, but they were saying like, if the harder the problem, the more you will reap from figuring it out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So like, of course, like you're not going to find financial independence by just like doing the bare minimum, doing what's easy, doing what, isn't risky, because that's not how it works. You have to put that time in, put the effort in, put the long nights, like the nights that we're sleeping on the carpet. There's no furniture. You just worked until 3 a.m. and
blow up that air mattress and call it a night and then wake up in the morning, start over again. Like
exactly. Like that's not talked about a lot.
You got like, when you start this process, you have probably like, if you are handy, maybe a 3-month sprint. If you're not handy, this is your first time, probably like a 5-month sprint. And you're going to be going, all in every day, trying to research as much as possible, working as much as possible. Like from my personal experience, I started this whole journey in August of 2020. I was like, you know what? I think it's time. I got enough money saved up. I need to start looking at real estate. And I was on the fence actually initially back in August of last year. I was like, is it, do I want to deal with tenants? Do I want to deal with that whole process of renting, or should I just buy a single family house and just live there myself.
Live paycheck to paycheck
Yeah,
forever.
forever, yeah.
Why not?
And I was like, that sounds pretty tempting to live paycheck to paycheck forever. But I was like, you know what? The numbers make sense on the rental. I'm just going to do that. And I just, middle of a phone call with my mortgage broker, I'm like, you know what? Never mind. Let's do a multifamily.
And like,
Then it like kept going from there. And I was like learning more about it. We found places, put the offer in, boom, 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 got the house. And then I'm like, holy crap, like I have no idea what I'm doing. And then you have to just work really hard every single day to get it done. And we bought it in September. I wasn't moved into this place till January 1st. So it was like, it was a lot to do. And I still have stuff to do. Once it warms up, I got more work lined up to do. So it's like, it's not like get rich quick. It's a get rich slow. So that it's not like you can just say, oh, this seems too good to be true. You're going to be in for some trouble if you think it's going to be like, super easy, but it's all worth it in the end.
And I haven't listened to any like motivational speakers in quite some time, but one that I used to was Les Brown, and something that he really preached a lot was like, you've got to want whatever you want more than you want to breathe. Like that direness, that true pull to like achieve whatever goal you're trying to face. Like, sure, living paycheck to paycheck is easier. I wanted to not live paycheck to paycheck more than I wanted to breathe. Like, seriously. Like, the overtime that I was putting in, the amount of work, the time that I wasn't getting to spend with friends and relax and do what's easy, that easy lifestyle, choosing to do the hardest lifestyle just for it's not even like a just for this. It's like for the reward of not living paycheck to paycheck, like 88% of Americans, like there's work involved. And as soon as like that desire doesn't come to people early a lot of times, especially like you just got out of college, you just got a new job, like things ain't so bad. Mm-hmm. And like it's so easy to fall into that, just this is what everyone does.
And it feels like you're being productive, going to work every single day.
You're making your mortgage payment, maybe if you own a house, and like, in 30 years I'll own this place.
And then 30 years comes, you're gearing up ready for, you're 40 years old, say, before you're paid
60 years old.
You're like, I got retirement around the corner, 40, 50 years old. And then you're like, my 401k is only going to last us, 3-4 years before we're completely out of money if we live at our current means. So we're going to either have to step it, like downsize exponentially, or, win the lottery if we want to stay where we're at. And then they're like, how do I make money? Maybe real estate. And then they dive into it.
And that's the average age of people investing in real estate is like 45 years old. Because they're seeing it late. And if you talk to any real estate investor that started when they were 45, they're going to tell you they wish they did it when they were your age. Like, they're going to wish, like, if I knew about this stuff, if I had that dire need when I was 20 years old and I had the energy and the means to do those 3 a.m. nights and to do all that stuff, like, I wish I took advantage of that. And we've had guests on that have been doing it with kids and stuff, but, like, to do that before you have that going on, this is the time.
Yep.
And even if, like, you don't have that desire more than you want to breathe, but you realize the benefits of the timing. Like it's a long game, and the earlier you get involved, the more fruitful it's going to be.
Even if you have like a really high paying job now, like just setting yourself up for the long-term income snowball, like your W-2 income is only going to grow so fast unless you're like really switching jobs often and you're growing new skills constantly and just working your way up any corporate ladder. You're going to be at a set trajectory of income increasements. And then, why not just spend a little bit of extra time now while you're young to build yourself a foundation of growable passive income, because your time isn't required here. It's just there's ways to make it so that you're not spending all your time, switching out toilets and stuff like that. It's just a foundation that you can set now. And all it takes is just some creative financing now, some saving up, some planning, a couple of conversations like with your circle of support now, finding anybody who can help you out on that journey and just trying to get started. Because like I said, for me, all I had was just money saved. I didn't know anything about it back in August. And after just reading constantly, it all comes to you and it all just makes so much sense.
Yeah. So we came to the point that it was just like, he understood, like he got it. He wanted to do more research. I sent him a bunch of books and stuff, things to start reading, resources to start learning more. And like over this next year, for anyone, whether you're hammering your student debt or saving up, that's the time to be doing all these resources with your downtime, to be reading all the books, to be learning all the things that you want. Like, I'm so sick of listening to ads on Spotify and Apple Music because I'm a cheap person that like refuses to pay monthly subscriptions to anything, and I hate it. So I listen to podcasts because they're not interrupted with ads and
Well, they have skippable ads from the host.
skippable ads. Yeah. I just think that it's the amount of time. If I chose to listen to music, because I love music, I like listening to music, but if I spent all the time that I've put into books and podcasts listening to music, like if you add that up, the amount of hours I would have listened to ads, it's like days, like days worth of ads, and the benefit of like the knowledge. And some people are like, oh, I don't retain as much when I'm listening to something. I think it's proven that you don't retain as much as opposed to reading it. But just picking up one thing, two things per hour, one new piece of information, one thing that like supports this idea that you're thinking, something that you can now implement into your plan. It's so valuable.
I think for me personally, it's the bringing up or like the spotlighting of specific topics to then do your own research on that you're not going to like have a whole entire book of information, from a single podcast on one specific topic or strategy, but you get shown that strategy that you can then look up, talk about, figure out more about, and see if it works for you personally. And like that works really well, especially when you're in the car driving, listening to a podcast. I recently, since I work from home now, since COVID, I don't have a commute anymore. I used to have a commute of 45 minutes there and back every day. It was great for podcasts, and now I don't have it anymore. So I have to find new time, and I actually just started doing it at the gym when I'm just warming up, getting ready to before I start really getting into it, I listen to podcasts, and then as soon as I need to really push myself, I have to turn on podcasts because Brandon Turner doesn't pump me up that much. So I gotta switch it up a little bit, but.
Yeah, and I did it more in the beginning, but having a notebook or your phone open when you're listening, even I know it's dangerous and I'm not telling you to text and drive, but having a little note app up and oh, they talked about this, writing that down real quick.
Just a voice to text?
Or a voice to text. Look at that. I don't even know how to work that on my phone. So
you just hold the space bar.
Well, whatever. But now you can go back and recap on each thing that you learned, even if it literally if it's one thing, to now reinforce it in your head, read it back. I want to plug this, and I don't want to talk about this episode too much because I actually just reached out to the guest, and I'm hoping to get him on our podcast. But on Bigger Pockets, their most recent episode, 448, go listen to it. If you haven't already, download Bigger Pockets, go listen to that episode. And it matched a lot of my thoughts and my strategies and things that I've been trying to implement with a ton of useful tips. I finished the episode and ran it right back. I played it again, and this time with the notes, and I had a whole sheet full of notes of stuff that I can implement into my strategy, into growing my business. And that,
I mean, the key word from that episode was just, he's super lazy. He says that over and over again, but he's built up enough passive income over the years with the family at the same time to then supplement his income from his W-2. So he has, reached financial freedom. And it's a really good episode. He's got a ton of good information in there. So episode 448 of Bigger Pockets is a must listen to for sure.
Yeah, it's Dion McNeely. But yeah, so with that, we kind of wanted, I know we've had a lot of guests on, we haven't had to do a ton of the MLS analysis, but we wanted to kind of hop into that. And there's a really good listing that we just saw that came up in Abington, PA, that it's a duplex, and Caleb's going to break down some of his numbers. He actually created his own whole Excel sheet that for doing deal analysis, and we'll tell you where you can kind of find that after we're done with the analysis. But
it's pretty simple and pretty straightforward. So when you're looking at a property, it's just how much income can you estimate it's going to bring in, how much expenses are you going to estimate to come out, and then how much money are you going to require to put into it to close the deal, your cash to close. And then running through all those numbers, I do this pretty often when I see a listing on the MLS. I just got to crunch the numbers, see if it's a good deal or not. Just, do those reps to, eventually as I do this, I've been noticing I've been able to see whether or not it's going to be a good deal based
before putting it in the Excel
strictly
sheet.
based off of the price and the units. And then you're like, it's not even close. I'm not even going to bother running the numbers.
Yeah, like, okay, a 2-bedroom's going for $1,200. There's 2 of them in Souderton, and they're asking $400,000 for it. That's not going to work.
Yeah, it's not even close.
You can just see that and know. But there's always that flexibility. Sometimes it'll be like a little high. The numbers might kind of work, but then you might have a little leverage if it's been on the market. So we're gonna get into this one. Caleb will break down some of the numbers. Well, I guess before we go into the numbers, we can start looking at the actual listing itself. So for this one,
address is 2477 Brookdale Avenue in Abington. It's got a 2-bed, 1-bath, and a 1-bed, 1-bath duplex, and it's an up-down split. So whenever you see an up-down split, your water is most likely all going to be tied in together and be one single line. So just something you can see off the bat with those. It's really rare to have split waters with an up-down duplex. And with this one, we have comped it using just other real estate websites like Zillow and apartments.com, rent.com. We check these to see what rentals are going for in the area at specific square feet and bed and bath. So we kind of just ballpark it. We try and find what's a comparable rental in the area that we can use to estimate how much can we get for these rentals. And doing that, we just used apartments.com for this one. We found some places that have similar setups, and we comped the 2-bed, 1-bath at $1,500 a month, and then the 1-bed, 1-bath at $1,200 a month.
So yeah, the comps that we used for this one, there wasn't actually any available on the market that weren't in apartment complexes. So that's a big plus. That's gonna increase your value significantly. And like, we were looking at this one dump of an apartment building. The 1-bedroom apartment was $1,195 and the 2-bedroom was $1,495 in this apartment complex. So we're giving like generous numbers, saying $1,200 in a standalone duplex for the 1-bedroom and $1,500 for the standalone 2-bedroom. Once it's rehabbed and stuff and in good shape, it could be significantly higher than that. But we're trying to just play safe numbers for now.
For sure. So that puts your $1,500 for the 2-bed, 1-bath, $1,200 for the 1-bed, 1-bath. That puts your gross monthly, estimated income at, $2,700 a month. And when we read the listing, they actually specified that by the time of sale, the whole place is going to be vacant, which is super nice when you, 1, want to claim residency, and 2, if they're underpaying market value for a rundown unit. So you can, have, granted, like, you're not going to have income right away when you buy the place, but if you have enough reserves and you can, start working immediately, you can have it turned around a lot faster than waiting for, a rent termination and all that kind of stuff.
And that the number, like, that's such a good crunch when you're not getting any rents in. So like, for this place, we definitely recommend you claiming residency in the 1-bed, because your mortgage is going to be closer up to the 2-bed rent amount. So you want to collect the most that you can. So but now that crunch, you've got, if you don't get it turned over in a month, you're paying the whole mortgage again, that you're losing whatever that mortgage payment is. So like, if it takes 2 months, you're losing 2. If it takes 3 months, you're losing 3. Like, that adds up. The sooner that thing is turned over, the sooner you're eliminating that payment. So, if let's say your capabilities are, you can maybe get half of the 1 unit done, or a majority, some stuff in the 1 month, and it would cost you, let's say $1,000 to hire someone else to come help you full time and get it done in that month, you're saving that mortgage payment of $1,500. So like, that makes sense to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that cost stacks up. Every single month it takes you to not get tenants in there is, taking right out of your profits. So time is of the essence with these when you're buying them and rehabbing them to rent them out. Like, you want to get them done ASAP. And that's why personally, like, when we talk about this working super late nights, the reason why we do that is to get it done as soon as possible. And you also have to factor in when a lease can start, which is like the first of the month. So if you
Well, you can start a lease any time in the
you
month.
can definitely. It's just
It's nicer to have everyone due on the first of the month, and then that's your day.
Yep.
But you can start a lease any day of the month, and it makes no difference.
Yep.
But
So, setting that timetable, you want to just like aim for that. And, worst case scenario, if you're a day or two late, is what it is. You just have to write that down in your calendar. But going back to the expenses for this place. So this is listed currently at $214,900 for this duplex. And we actually are running the numbers on a product offered by KeyBank. They gave us some pretty good numbers. It's only required 5% down, and to specify, this is only a first-time home buyer program. So if you already own a property, you wouldn't qualify for this, but it's actually a pretty solid deal. You pay 1% higher on the interest rate over the lifetime of the loan, but you are only required 5% down, and there's no PMI. So you save that money, which there's some PMI calculators online, and depending on what your credit score is, that can actually be a significant amount of money each month that you're paying. So that would take that out. And we actually ran the numbers both ways looking at it. And, over the short term, you are saving a little bit of money, not paying PMI versus, using a traditional loan where you are paying it. So with that extra 1% interest rate. So go ahead, Jake.
Yeah. So the thing with the key bank loan is during all this COVID stuff, it's been a lot harder for banks and to approve 5% down for a duplex or something like that. What KeyBank is doing is they're taking this loan on the chin. That KeyBank is going to hold your loan for the lifetime of it, and they're going to make their money where normally the PMI that's required, like all those other regulations through normal lenders, they don't have those same rules because they're not selling your mortgage to Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac.
Yep, the banks traditionally, when you get a conventional loan through a bank, they have all these stipulations given to them by, the huge, massive mortgage companies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They say, in order for us to buy this loan from you, the bank, you need to meet all these criteria. So that's why they have so much stuff for you to meet yourself to get approved for the loan. But when these banks offer it through themselves where they hold the loan, you can be a little more flexible. Granted, you'll pay a little bit more for it, with that extra 1% interest rate over the lifetime of the loan. But for a 5% down on a multifamily that's going to generate you income, it makes sense every day of the week. So
the other program, so I was reaching out to a couple local banks because I was trying to figure some financing out for myself personally, but I was asking all these banks I was talking to, like, what other programs do you offer? What stuff do you have for first-time home buyers? And like KeyBank, this lady I was talking to, Annie, she's super helpful, and she broke down that. She broke down for first-time home buyers, what was it? For single-family houses, it was 0% down and the same 1% extra on the interest rate, and their debt-to-income ratio was 45%. So when we were talking about the USDA loan on, I think it was, what was that, episode 2 or something? Episode 2 or 3. That was another zero down program, but your debt to income was like 30%. So that's going back saying, okay, I make $3,000 a month. Your mortgage can't exceed $1,000 a month. That really limits you with that buying power, especially if it's something with zero down. Your mortgage payment's going to be much higher opposed to 20% down. So now, even if you had in our area, if you found $100,000 house, that would still kind of be hard to afford. Maybe 100,000, I'm sure you could, but like 150, 200 in that range that we're looking at, you can't afford it that way. But now with a 45%, if you make $3,000 a month, that's closer to 1,500 that you're able to afford. So same thing. I'm not saying go buy a house. If it's not going to make you money, but if you go out and you buy a house and you're planning on renting rooms, this is another really great program that KeyBank is offering. So yeah, I definitely worth looking into,
and also shop around as well. So like they change their product offerings as the market changes as well. So like it's a good idea to like just look up on Google Maps just banks in your area, get their phone number, shoot them a call, see who will talk to you, see if you can get some product offerings. Because at the end of the day, you are a customer to them and they make money off of you. So you're not going and begging for money from them. You're trying to make them money. So you just have to look at it that way, that you're a customer and you're trying to pick a service provider. That service is being financing.
Yeah.
So just...
Sorry, I have one more kind of quick tip when you are going to shop around those things. They're all going to ask you, a lot of information for your personal info and stuff like that. And everyone, like, I can't emphasize this enough, make sure they're not running a credit check on you and giving you a pre-approval if you're not ready, because each bank that does that is another hard inquiry. It's going to hit your credit score, and I've seen it happen. Like, you don't do that. Just find out what programs they're offering. If you can tell them your credit score, you can tell them your income, but just make sure that...
Yeah, if they ask for your social, don't give them your social pretty much.
That's it.
They'll hit you real hard and then they'll ding your credit, which then makes the cost,
next one a lot harder.
Yeah, the lower your credit score, the higher loans cost. So, something you got to be really careful with. And for this house, we're doing with the MLS analysis numbers here, we're just going to use the 5% down payments, so that of that initial listing price of $214,000, we take 5% down, which is a little over $10,000 you're paying. And then the loan amount, you subtract those two numbers. I just use the mortgage calculator on Google to, get a rough estimate of like what you're going to be paying for principal and interest. We're going to post this calculator on our Facebook group once we're done here, so you can reference the notes right from the MLS analysis, see exactly what we're talking about. Understand following numbers can be kind of hard on a podcast, so we'll give you all the resources here, the links and everything, so you can do all this yourself. Just even looking on Zillow, you can find out all the information you need. Going forward, the PMI, like we said, that's $0. Insurance, we're estimating from our prior deals around $75 a month. Taxes, they're a little bit high for this place. $430 a month. That is a little steep. And then utilities, we're shooting a little bit high since water isn't separated. You're looking at about $150 a month. So all those numbers aside, every month for this place, you're estimating $1,600 in expenses. So what we talked about earlier with once you have those units fully fixed up and rented out for market rents, you're looking at $2,700 a month coming in. And then from those expenses, $1,600 leaving every month. So, subtract those two, that's $1,100 in cash flow once the place is fully rented out. Granted, while you're living there, it won't, of course, you're going to be living in one of those units. It's not going to be 100%. But if you have the 2-bed, 1-bath rented out while you're living there, you're looking at only spending about $100 every month.
Or like we said, like we shot low. List it for $1,700.
Yep.
See what you get. If you can be positive, if no one, responds, everyone thinks it's too high, then, move on. But someone will rent it. And if someone will give you $1,700 a month and you can pay all your expenses plus $100 a month, give it a shot. The worst thing that can happen is they say no.
Yep. And then, I guess worst case would be you have to spend another month on mortgage.
Also true.
So careful with that one. Don't shoot too high and then get stuck with no pool of tenants to choose from. Or worse, a horrible pool of tenants to choose from and you're stuck with that person for a year and with a huge headache. So it's something you got to think about there. And running the numbers again, we're cash on cash return is
what's our down payment yet? Did we go over that?
Yeah,
5%.
5% down is $10,750.
And then what are we thinking for closing costs?
Yeah, closing costs are kind of up to whatever bank you're using, but a good estimate is just double your down payment. That's kind of like around
if we're this low. I think if you're putting 20% down, I don't think you're doubling that.
Yeah,
but
most likely, yeah.
For 5%, I think if we're looking at $10,000, that's kind of fair.
Yep. And
so from
like deals we've done, that's pretty similar to like what we paid out of pocket, and that's going to put the closing costs, at $21,000 or cash to close. So it's pretty affordable. Of course, that the one thing that we didn't really dive into yet is the cost of rehabbing this place. And from the pictures, it definitely needs some work. It looks like it hasn't been taken care of in a little bit. And depending on, your ability to fix it up yourself, you're going to greatly vary how much money you spend. Like you could, using like my experience, I had only put $3,000 into rehab my entire house, whereas if I had hired contractors, that probably would have been $10,000 to $15,000 at the end of the day.
Based on these pictures, it looked pretty similar to Caleb's, maybe in a little bit of worse shape. So if you want to, estimate 15 for hiring it out and 5 for doing a lot yourself, again, there's 11 pictures on the listing.
Yeah.
Most of them are outside. There's, I think, 3 pictures of the interior. Unless you go in and take a look, you're never going to know. And another big tip is, if you don't know what you're looking for, bring someone with you who does.
Absolutely. It's super important to be able to get as much information as possible during that walkthrough. Like you're talking about an agreement over 30 years where you're going to be, long holding this house and dealing with all the problems that come up, using the strategy of holding rentals. So you want to make sure that you get all the leverage you can get when you're going through the seller negotiations, because if you find a ton of stuff wrong with the place, you can use that as your benefit to spend less money. So we've hinted at this topic before. We're going to be putting a lot more effort into explaining it more, and that's just seller assistance. And that's when you have a threshold of a percentage that's the maximum that a seller is allowed to pay you to buy their property, and that all that money goes towards your closing costs for this.
I think it was up to, if you're putting 3% down, and these numbers are a little rough, but it's, if you're putting 3% down or lower, or 5% down and lower, you're eligible for up to 3%. If you're putting up to 24%, so that 5
that's right,
to 24% is up to 6%, 25% and over that you put down is 9%, up to 9%. So each one of those things, for me and Caleb personally, we beat up the price in the beginning. We made it contingent on inspections. Then in our reply to inspections, we put in the seller's assist for a little more money to take off of the down payment. And it's just off the down payment. It's just off the cash to close. It's not off the purchase price. And when you do that, it makes a huge difference. Like Caleb got 10 or 11 grand back.
10.5 back. It was the max seller assist because, we found the roof was really old and there's a bunch of stuff that just needed to be cleaned up and other odds and ends. And I just wrote up a seller assist request, sent it to my buying agent. He sent it to a listing agent. We got the text, said they approved it, and then boom, $10,500 back in my pocket, after closing the deal. So it's the best kind of money you can get, money in your pocket right now. So It's not like it takes off $10,000 from the lifetime of the loan, because you're going to see probably only a few dollars a month difference over the lifetime of that loan, as you're paying it off. But this is right up, your closing costs are cut by $10,000 for my circumstance. So it really helped me out to be able to afford the rehab costs. So, you got a lot of wiggle room in these numbers, and, it depends on your abilities as well. If you want to really dive headfirst into this and learn how to do the rehab yourself, it's not that complicated. It just takes a lot of time. There's no easy way out. It's just stuff you have to pick up one thing at a time and figure it out. So we're looking at, if you did have to pay somebody, $15,000 to rehab, you'd be almost 40 grand out of pocket to get this house up and running, which is a good chunk of change versus, if you are doing it yourself, estimating $5,000 in material cost, you're only talking $26,000. So,
and let's say for that, you end up getting a seller's assist for $6,000, which 20 grand. That's putting us at the situation we were talking about in the beginning. Is 20 grand actually realistic to do this? And it's
absolutely. And you really got to talk to your circle of support, people around you. Granted, if you're from an area where no one has any money and you're just scraping by to save that 20,000, maybe you want to just get a little bit more before doing it. But if you have people around you who would, in dire need, be able to give you, a few grand to pay for paint and stuff for your house, you want to use everything you can to get started, because if you're young, you're just getting into the workforce, you're not expected to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in reserves to pay for all this stuff. So, there's always ways to get creative with your financing. And, with this deal, your return on your cash going into it is really high. So having only $26,000 put into this deal, and then with the income that we talked about of $1,100 each month, you're talking a 50% cash on cash return. So that's super high. Your entire investment's paid back in
2 years,
Two
a
years.
little more with 1100. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's that those are the deals that me and Caleb were doing. And again, like we're doing it based on the numbers of the second year. By you living there for a year is that cost to get you that cash on cash, but it's worth it. You're living for free or practically for free, so it's still saving.
And
But
especially
then
if you're paying rent now as well, like
Right.
getting into that house, you're going to be saving so much money and having, only a $200, monthly bill, or a 100 if you can get a higher amount. You're going to be your savings rate's going to increase, and then you can then increase your income snowball and then get more properties faster. So like I noticed that myself. I was only paying, like I said, $350 a month living at my parents' house. Now I get net positive like $50 a month. So it's a big difference for my savings rate, only that $400 difference.
Right. So one other thing that I really like about this property is the location. Abington, we've been staying farther away from the city, but the closer you go, the more rents are increasing, the more people that are trying to move out of the city but still work in the city, even if people up here work in the city and make that commute, and shortening that commute makes that place a lot more valuable. So I see a lot of appreciation.
Yeah, definitely
potential.
appreciation there for sure. And we can't ever calculate what that's going to be, but one thing we can do is just use previous data to figure out, is it going to go up or is it going to go down? And all the data shows it's going to go up. So over the long term, of course. So, we're not saying you're going to buy this house and in 2 years you can flip it for money. We're saying by the time the end of your 30 years is up, that's going to be worth more money.
For sure.
Definitely a good long-term play. So is it possible to get into real estate with $20,000? Absolutely. Absolutely, it's possible. You're going to have to find the right deal to make it happen, but there's no reason to say that you can't do it without more than that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of circle back and talk a little bit more about the seller's assist, because what we were describing was kind of how we've been using it so far. And I just wanted to speak to everyone, on the house hunt now, especially for single family houses. It is a tough market. Everything is going above asking. It's hard to be competitive, especially if you have a budget. And I was thinking personally for myself, kind of ways for me to afford a down payment without claiming residency and buying it strictly as an investment property. I would be banking on that seller's assist. And like, you don't want to be banking on the seller's assist, because a lot of the times, you go into it, you do the inspections, and then in the reply to inspections is when you offer. But you're able to put that in your initial offer. You can offer, let's say 10 grand more on the asking price and ask for a 10 grand seller's assist. You're still at the same asking price, but you're putting $10,000 less on your down payment. So it's definitely a tool, and I don't think it's talked about a lot, because it's like, well, wait, I'm putting either 210 or 220 and getting 10 back. What's the difference? The difference is huge. 10 grand now, if you can't come up with 10 extra grand, this is the solution. Your mortgage will be incrementally higher off of 10 grand, maybe the most $100 a month, but you're saving that 10 grand now. And if your rents can cover that cost, that's a no-brainer.
Especially now with how low interest rates are, like you're getting that $10,000 over the lifetime of the loan for cheap. Like we're talking inflation rates, where they're saying the average is like 3% or whatever, and you're getting it for like under 3, that's a no-brainer. And then you get that padding on your deal now of an extra $10,000 to use for whatever the rehab is, whatever goes wrong with the property. You get all that extra capital reserves to make sure you don't get stuck and go underwater on your first deal. It's extremely useful.
Yeah. And right now I'm working with a buyer. We're looking at single family houses, and I just kind of was thinking about the strategy for myself personally, and now we're implementing it on the offers that we're putting in now, because they're working with a budget, and
it's a hot market.
It's a hot market. It's hard. Like, what are those things that can set you apart? And you can waive your contingencies now, because you're already getting what you could get if you found something in the inspection that was going to tank it. Not everything. Like, it could definitely get worse, but most of these places in this range that we're looking at right now, there are a lot of cash offers over asking and with no contingencies. And like both of my properties, I had contingencies in for inspection. Caleb's property, he had contingencies in for inspection. But the multifamily market, there's not as many sharks, fighting after the same thing as the single family market right now. So it's
Which
just
is-
something for everyone, no matter what you're looking to do with real estate. It's something to put in your
your toolkit, pretty
in your
much.
toolkit.
Yeah, just it's just another option to use. And when you're running up a little bit short on a deal, maybe it's a good thing to throw that in there, so that way, like say if the deal is going to cost you cash to close $21,000 and you have $21,400 in your bank account, maybe it's a good idea to throw that in there so you're not walking away with $400 to pay for your rehab, because that's going to be tight.
Exactly. So no, that I really like this deal personally. If that's somewhere that you want to live and you're a little handy because it's going to take some work, I for sure love this place and I would definitely recommend checking it out. But so kind of segueing out of that, this Excel sheet that Caleb's made, we're going to be posting that in the Facebook group that we just made. It's the Young Slumlord Podcast on Facebook. It's open to everyone. You don't have to request to join or anything like that. You can just hop right in. We've got a decent amount of friends in it so far, and the point of it is now we have kind of a space. Like I didn't want to be spamming all my friends and family who like doesn't care about financial independence, doesn't care about real estate, which like why wouldn't you? But I get some people don't want to see it on their timeline all the time. So we wanted to get off of our personal stuff and we wanted to get somewhere where now this community that we're talking about, trying to build like that, have me and Caleb have just been in group chats with and texting, it opens the door for more participation, more people to get kind of active in there and field questions. Like if we didn't say something in one of the episodes, like, or we said something and they didn't add up, or, you wanted clarification on something, like that's the perfect place because it's not just me and Caleb who can answer it. It's everyone in the group. So we're collectively way more smarter than just one person.
And then of course, like if somebody has a question and we answer it and a bunch of other people have the same question, we can make sure that everyone sees those answers as well. So
yeah,
we're hoping to like make it more public on our responses to people, so that way we can reach more people without having to individually text dozens and dozens of people all day.
Right. And like kind of so the start of this, it's funny, we had Sean come on the podcast the other day, and he had been on Craig's show, and we're both doing podcasts. We're much newer, and I listened to both podcasts. They were both great, and I asked Sean like, what's something that we might be able to do to be better? And he said something that the other show did that we didn't was they have a social media presence, and they have, they're able to like a guest comes on and give them a shout out, because now all of our followers can now follow them and see kind of what they're doing, add value to them, get value from them, and like everyone kind of grows together. So like I made an Instagram group, the Young Slumlord Podcast. There's like underscores between each word, and we follow a ton of other real estate posts, all of our friends, we're having more people come on there, and I posted it on Facebook, and then people on Facebook were like, dude, like we want to see this stuff, but we're not on Instagram. And I was like, all right, a Facebook group would be cool too. And like, now it's kind of answering both questions. We can stay up to date, like keep everyone posted when the new episodes are coming out, and, just keep kind of the traction going, because the more people we have listening, the more people who subscribe to the shows, the more people who leave reviews and ratings on the show, like it enhances our reputation, which gives us the ability to bring better guests on for you guys. So the more work that you guys do, like just leaving a review, like writing a review, leaving a rating, subscribing, doing that stuff. I don't want to be like, yo, this is Kyle, smash the subscribe button and like bombard everyone every week with that. Like that's just annoying. But like for the people that have been listening and are gaining some type of value from it, no matter what it is, if you were to do that, it's going to just increase our guests. It's going to increase the influence of our guests, the bigger time guests that like we're really trying to get on the show, and that can bring the most value to everyone.
And I think there's a lot of people like in the industry of real estate who like haven't done any of the circuits, going on podcast to podcast, talking about their experience. There's a lot of people in this industry, and there's a ton of super valuable information that they've learned through their experience that we can hopefully get them to tell about on these episodes. So we're constantly trying to find people to come on the show. So if you know anybody who's been around in real estate, definitely let us know. We're open to have guests on. We do in person if you're in the area, or Zoom if you're not, or if you want to do Zoom, either one works for us. So we're open for any potential guests on here. We're constantly looking ourselves to try and provide the most value, because experience is everything in this industry. So if we can get somebody who's done something, that we can learn from, everybody else can learn from it as well. So
Exactly.
we're actively trying to get all that over to you guys.
Exactly. So with that, smash that subscribe button, give us a rating, But yeah, no. Thanks everyone for listening, man. We'll see you guys next week. We got a cool guest lined up for next week, and peace.